I see beds drying out too fast, staying wet for weeks, or rotting roots all season, and the gardener keeps blaming weather or irrigation. The problem is almost always the mulch. Different mulches don't just slow evaporation, they actively change how water moves, how long it stays, and how roots experience oxygen. If you get this wrong, no amount of watering discipline fixes it. If you want results instead of guessing, subscribe now. This channel exists for growers who want to understand what actually works in real beds, not what sounds neat on a garden blog. Raised beds exaggerate moisture mistakes instead of forgiving them. In-ground soil has depth and buffering capacity. Raised beds don't. They drain faster, heat faster, and dry from the sides as well as the top. That makes mulch choice far more influential than most people realize. I've tested identical soil mixes in identical raised beds, same crops, same irrigation, changing only the mulch layer. The moisture differences weren't subtle. Some beds needed water every 2 days. Others stayed evenly moist for over a week. Root development followed those patterns exactly. Bare soil dries faster than most gardeners admit. A raised bed with no mulch loses moisture aggressively. In warm conditions, I routinely measure a 30 to 40% drop in available moisture in the top 10 centimeters within 48 hours. That's not drought stress yet, but it pushes roots shallow and forces frequent watering. Bare soil also crusts. Once that crust forms, water infiltration slows, runoff increases, and the bed alternates between dry on top and waterlogged underneath. This is why just water deeper doesn't fix bare raised beds. The structure isn't cooperating. Straw mulch conserves water but creates sharp, wet-dry cycles. Straw is popular for a reason. At a depth of about 7 to 10 centimeters, it cuts surface evaporation dramatically. In my beds, straw reduced watering frequency by roughly 30% compared to bare soil. The downside is how it handles rainfall and irrigation. Straw sheds water initially, then absorbs it unevenly. Beds tend to swing between very wet and fairly dry zones. Shallow-rooted crops like lettuce tolerate this. Fruit crops don't love it. Straw also collapses over time. By mid-season, that 10-centimeter layer may compress to half its thickness, changing moisture behavior without you noticing. If you use straw, you need to top it up or accept that moisture retention declines as the season goes on. Wood chips hold moisture longer, but change how roots behave. Coarse wood chips are my default for long-season raised beds. At a consistent 8 to 12 centimeters deep, they stabilize moisture better than straw. Water penetrates slowly but evenly, and evaporation stays low. In my tomato and pepper beds, chip-mulched soil stays within a narrower moisture range, meaning roots grow deeper and more evenly. I've measured usable moisture lasting 5 to 7 days longer than bare soil in moderate summer heat. The trade-off is temperature. Chips keep soil cooler. In early spring, this delays warm season crops unless the beds are already heat-soaked. I often pull chips back for the first few weeks, then reapply once growth is established. Shredded leaves behave differently depending on how fine they are. Whole or lightly shredded leaves act more like wood chips. They create air pockets, slow evaporation, and allow decent infiltration. Finely shredded leaves behave closer to felt. They seal the surface and can trap moisture too effectively. In one raised bed trial, finely shredded leaves at 6 centimeters depth kept soil wet enough to promote fungal issues in basil and cilantro. The same leaves, applied whole at 10 centimeters, produced ideal moisture without stagnation. Leaf mulch works best when it breathes. If it mats, you've gone too fine or too thick. Compost as mulch is usually a mistake for moisture control. This is where I disagree hard with common advice. Compost is a soil amendment, not a great mulch. Used as a surface layer, it darkens, absorbs heat, and dries faster than people expect. In raised beds, compost-only mulch often leads to daily watering in summer. It also encourages shallow rooting because, moisture is concentrated right at the surface. I use compost under mulch, not instead of it. If compost is all you have, keep it thin, around 2 to 3 centimeters, and just accept that it won't stabilize moisture the way structural mulches do. Plastic and fabric mulches trap moisture, but honestly they remove margin for error. Plastic mulch nearly eliminates evaporation. In raised beds, that means moisture builds quickly and stays high. For crops that like consistent moisture, this can be powerful. It's also easy to overdo. Under plastic, I've seen beds go anaerobic after heavy rain because excess water had nowhere to escape fast enough. Roots stalled even though the soil never looked dry. Fabric mulch breathes more, but still limits evaporation significantly. Both options require precise irrigation control. If your watering isn't dialed in, these mulches punish mistakes instead of forgiving them. Mulch depth matters more than the material name. A thin layer of a good mulch performs worse than a thick layer of an average one. Depth controls airflow, evaporation rate, and insulation. For straw, less than 5 centimeters barely changes moisture behavior. For chips, under 6 centimeters dries too quickly. Leaves need enough depth to overlap and shade the soil fully. I adjust depth seasonally. Thicker in peak heat. Thinner when soil needs to warm or dry out faster. Raised bed moisture isn't just about water loss, it's about oxygen. Overly wet soil isn't just wet, it's oxygen poor. Some mulches trap moisture so effectively that they reduce gas exchange, especially in fine textured soil mixes. This shows up as yellowing stalled growth and root pruning even when the bed never dries. In these cases, switching to a coarser mulch fixes the issue without changing watering at all. Good mulch balances moisture retention with airflow. That balance is what most advice ignores. Hydroponic systems prove how surface conditions shape roots. In hydroponic and semi-hydro systems, there is no soil buffer. Oxygen and moisture balance is immediate. When I translate those lessons back to raised beds, the pattern is clear. Roots respond more to consistency than abundance. Mulches that create steady moisture encourage deeper, healthier roots. Mulches that swing between extremes create shallow, reactive root systems. Yield follows root behavior every time. There is no universal best mulch, only the best match for your bed. Cool climate beds benefit from faster drying, warming mulches early. Hot climate beds need insulation and evaporation control. Heavy soil needs breathability. Light soil needs coverage. The mistake is copying a mulch choice without understanding why it works somewhere else. Once you see mulch as a moisture regulator instead of a cover, your beds start behaving predictably. Good mulch choices reduce watering, disease, and stress at the same time. When moisture stabilizes, everything else improves. Roots explore deeper. Nutrient uptake evens out. Diseases tied to stress decline. You stop reacting and start managing. That's what serious gardening looks like. If this helped you rethink how you mulch your raised beds, subscribe to the Husbandry channel and share this video with someone still fighting their watering schedule. Growing better food starts with understanding how water really moves through your system, not just how often you turn the hose on.